Hello, hello. Nice to see you waving. You. Okay, so I'm gonna spotlight myself. That means that I will be seen on every screen. So in case there's any noise, then because if somebody kind of accidentally even puts the microphone on, then usually the camera goes to that person. So while I'm talking, you will be seeing my face still. Let's wait. Let's hang on. What's the time? No, I think we can. Or I think my phone is still 1 minute. 1 minute before past. So let's wait 1 minute. Okay. And as much as you can, it would be nice to see your faces as well. I usually like to have while I'm sharing, I usually like to have the gallery view, so I see everybody like next to each other. So if it's a possibility for you in terms of, you're not in the toilet or or shower or something like that, then it would be lovely to see you. Okay, and we have more than double signed up, but usually people don't, or usually people don't. I mean, not everybody comes anyway, but let's give it a 30 seconds more. I'm Finnish and I'm very punctual. I think here where we live in Spain, it's kind of it's very normal that people are 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, even 15 minutes late. But I think I'm still quite Finnish, so I feel responsible to start in a good time. Yes. So I'll say to the newcomers as well, so if you have a chance to turn your camera on, it's really lovely, because I like to see the gallery view and not just like the black screens where you don't know who's there or who's not there or what's going on. And it gives a sense of I think, when people see each other, it gives a sense of like a group. Yeah, so you're not just alone. Yeah. And it's nice to also, if you want to talk, if you want to ask some questions even during the presentation, I'll leave some time at the end, of course, to have a little bit of like a Q&A. But in case you have something that really comes up in the moment when I'm talking about something, you can just turn your mic on and ask, so we can make this as interactive as you want, basically. Yeah. And yeah, so let me start already. So my name is Sat Darshan, and I have been doing Kundalini yoga. That's like my main practice and the main thing I started teaching. I've been doing it since 2003 and teaching it since 2004. So it was a very kind of quick lunge into it. And then coaching, I got interested in I got interested in working more one-to-one in 2000 and maybe 2016, 2017. But really I started training in 2019, and then last year I graduated in the midst of COVID. And my specialization is in relationships, and in terms of like relationship to yourself and relationship to others. And also the spiritual coaching is kind of what comes with yoga. But I really love to work one-to-one, because I've been teaching groups so many years already. So it's a very familiar thing. and somehow the one-to-one has given another aspect that I really appreciate, which means that you can go very deep with people. And in terms of my take on emotions, where it comes from, a little bit of background. I was not very emotionally fluid for most part of my life, because I was very sensitive as a child. So I grew up in Finland, where people are not very emotionally fluid usually, I think. And then on top of that, I had a very, very strict upbringing to some extent, to some part. It was like my father was very strict and my mother was completely the opposite. And somehow the strictness was very shocking for me. And what I ended up doing is I ended up kind of bottling myself up and kind of, hiding all joy and hiding all emotions and believing that none of that was acceptable. And so then a few years back, 5-6 years, something like that, there was like a huge expansion of consciousness, and through that all the emotional life just like woke up, opened up. And of course I had felt emotions before as well, but not to this extent, and not to the extent that I would understand what the purpose of it is also in a spiritual sense. So that started a big exploration of this topic and what emotions mean, and what somehow what they can do for us, what they are signs of, and also how we can deal with them. How we can deal, because it was like 1 year, especially the first year when it all began, was really like an earthquake. So I just had to kind of hold on to something and try to breathe while everything was going on. And then after that very intense thing, it's like I've learned to really see the beauty and the purpose of emotions, and what they really are about, and how they affect everything in life, and how much is dependent on them in terms of self-esteem, self-acceptance, and vice versa. So let's get to it. So the definition of self-esteem, I just checked in Google, but I think it tells it very, very nicely, very neatly. The self-esteem is confidence in one's own worth or abilities, and it also refers to self-respect, or relates to self-respect. So that's what we're talking about. It's about your sense of worthiness. It's about you trusting and having confidence on your abilities, and it has also the element of self-respect, how much you respect yourself. And you could also say that how much integrity you have in yourself. And so that's what we're more or less dealing with when we're speaking of self-esteem. And of course, different languages, when they translate it, they might translate it like in Finnish we could say itsetunto, possibly could say itseluottamus, and so on. So there are like different colors to it, let's say. Like different tastes that the different words have, but self-esteem more or less contains all of it. And now when we're speaking of emotions, I want to also make the distinction between 3 parts of ourselves. So we have the mind, we have the body, and then we have the heart. The language of the mind is thoughts. Yeah, when we're thinking, it's to do with how the mind functions, or how the mind is expressing itself. And of course, thoughts are to a very large extent automatic, so it's not like we have to have effort to think. We have to rather have effort not to think of something, or effort to keep silence in the mind, and training, of course. And then the language of the body, emotions. Yeah, and these have a very, very subtle and very fast connection. So when we're thinking, almost immediately it becomes an emotion. The yogis teach of something that we call the cycle of thought, I think, or maybe cycle of intellect, but anyway, talking about thoughts. So you have a thought coming, then it becomes a feeling, and feeling is not an emotion yet. Feeling is something that you just feel like something, but there's no like a personal touch to it yet, whereas emotion is something that you have already held onto, and it has your personal interpretation in a way. And then from emotion we have a desire. Yeah, so it's a desire to turn towards something, or desire to turn away from something. And when you have a desire, it's already very, very difficult to get rid of, because thought very subtle, feeling a little bit denser, emotion even denser, desire very dense, and then you have action. Yeah, so that's the ladder of subtlety of the thought, and how everything comes from the thought. But that's the language of the mind. Yeah, and when we're speaking of the language of the body, what's important here to know is that changes in the body and changes in the emotions are not as quick as changes in the mind. So when we're trying to change, when we're trying to let's say heal from something, or we made a decision that I'm not going to behave in this way anymore, then what happens is that usually the body at some point starts telling the old message. Yeah, so the body has not yet changed, your emotion has not yet changed, so the old emotion comes up. Let's say that you have decided to stay positive always when you meet your ex-partner. Yeah, or positive always when you meet your parents, or positive always when you meet your boss, who's a bit of an yeah. So what happens is that even if we tell in our mind something and we really kind of psych ourselves up for it, it might work and you might feel positive all the time, but it might be that your body at some point is sending like the old message, which is the negativity that comes up. Yeah, the body is actually the realm of the subconscious. So it's in the subconscious, in other words. And the interesting thing is that the subconscious is always more powerful than the conscious mind. Yeah. So subconscious is somehow what rules us. And the emotion is therefore, whether it is something that we can feel or whether it's completely hidden from us, but it's what rules over us. And I'll come to the heart in a bit, and like the realm of the heart. But when it comes to body and emotions, we're speaking of the space of vulnerability, a kind of a rawness to it, or there's kind of a rawness to it. And also spiritually is the realm of the feminine, Heavenly Father, then you have the Mother Earth. So it's the realm of the feminine and the realm of the sensitivity also. And the tricky bit here is that where we are at the moment in terms of evolution of humanity is that we are somehow waking up to this feminine consciousness. We're somehow waking up to our vulnerability. We're waking up to our emotion. Because also in the spiritual sense, most of the traditions have been, for I would say thousands of years, been talking about, how this life is suffering and how, we are waiting for the afterlife, like the heaven, which is somewhere else, which is not in the body. And for example, in Christianity during the Dark Ages, there was a lot of punishment of the body. And also, again, in Christianity, there was very heavy punishment of crimes. I went once to see, I think it was an exhibition of crime and punishment, and it kind of showed all the different kind of punishments that you could have had from, I don't know, from what year to what year, but like really crazy stuff. And even in Spain, still, I think it was 1970, they were still using a death penalty, and the way to die was that you would screw a big screw into the head, from here. They would put your or tie your head with some kind of metal thing, and then they would screw here. Yeah. And the cruelty basically that there has been when it comes to the physical body, when it comes to vulnerability, when it comes to emotions, is crazy, And of course you still have something like this going on, but I think it's changing. I mean, death penalty is not in so many countries anymore. There's a lot more consciousness on physical punishment. And for example, in Finland, by law, you can't physically punish your children. Yeah. So there has been this kind of roughness for, centuries, for thousands of years, and now we are starting to come out of it. So what's happening also is that, because we're not just our mind, we're not just our emotions, but we also have something that even the Western psychology somehow recognizes. If you're, for example, reading Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, he's talking about, I think what he calls it is the collective, either it's unconscious or subconscious. So in other words, we have a collective part of our mind, and also yogis speak of this, is that there is this chitta field, which is like the field of consciousness, but it's a consciousness that is not pure consciousness, but it's already conditioned. So it's already kind of hurt consciousness. There is pure consciousness with it as well, but it is consciousness that is also hurt, and consciousness where there's also karma already involved. So kind of like how from the beginning it was pure, when all the world was manifest, this pure consciousness was there, and little by little things started happening. So it started getting this field of consciousness, started getting all kind of imprints and karmic patterns and all these things. And so in other words, how this relates to us as individuals is that we're all carrying more or less the same stuff. Yeah, we're all carrying some kind of emotional pain. We're all carrying some kind of hurts. Yeah, we all have more or less the same emotions that repeat. It's just a matter of, you know, the packaging being slightly different. Our stories are different. You know, what exactly happened in your childhood or how exactly you're living at the moment is very unique. But there's like an underlying similarity in all the humanity. Yeah. And depending on, for example, where you're born in terms of the country, that country has a certain kind of emotional structure. Yeah. So people in Finland, for example, there tends to be shame, there tends to be envy. Those are two main things. And for example, anger is seen as something really like, you know, that person was angry at me. Whoa. In Spain, on the other hand, you know, anger is something that people can, you know, show, and it's not like the end of the world. So different cultures, or I would say different countries, have like a slightly different combination of how the emotions usually are. And of course you have exceptions always, yeah, but this collective consciousness or subconsciousness affects you as well. So you have the collective in terms of your family and your family lineage. You have collective in terms of maybe the country, certainly where you're born, but it could be also areal, that there in that area there are certain kind of maybe in some areas there's more violence than in another area. Maybe in some area there's more pride than in another area. Yeah. And then you have like the all humanity that comes, like the collective of the humanity that we're dealing with in one way or another. And everything affects us in some way. And then how you individually somehow, I would say, it's not a conscious choice or conscious selection, but there's a kind of a selection anyway, like a resonance, like what you resonate with the most, how you're built, what's your body structure, is then quite unique. But everybody has potentially the same emotions, and everybody has potentially same kind of problems with emotions also, same kind of issues, but not everything manifests in one person. Yeah. So in some way you could say that we're all representations of the same one collective pool. Okay, so then I would say that the most challenging situation with emotions is where the emotions become either something that are totally not acceptable, or some emotions are totally not acceptable, because that's when you're really stopping a flow. Yeah. Or when the emotions become an addiction. So addiction could mean like let's say that you're bored, and because of this you get frustrated and angry, or you feel insignificant, and then your first go-to emotion there is anger, or you feel disconnected from yourself and you always go to sadness, because sadness is what, you know, it's like connection to yourself also. And especially if there is like a crazy eight. So crazy eight is when we go from one emotion to another, and those are usually two emotions that repeat. So I'll give you an example. I might feel really insignificant in some moment, and then I get angry, because anger gives you power, anger gives you a sense of significance, I am important, and then I'm in that for some time, and then at some point I start feeling kind of like a bit maybe shame, and then I go into sadness. And I'm here for some time in the sadness. I connect to myself, I kind of withdraw. I did something so how could I be again so angry, and I said so nasty to that person. And then again at some point I start feel maybe insignificant, and then I go to anger again, and then I go back and forth these. So that's usually like a problematic thing that happens, because most of the time people are not really aware of this pattern, and it just kind of takes them. But we can also learn to step out of it. When we start recognizing what's happening, we can start choosing also how we react exactly. And instead of for example, feeling sad, we do something else, something more positive that makes us feel connection to ourselves. Maybe we sing, or we do a meditation, or we call a good friend with whom we have a very intimate connection that always is like a heart to heart, and so on. So it's the awareness about this crazy eight what helps us to get out of it, and then finding ways that we can give ourselves what we're looking for from these emotions. So like the connection to oneself, or the feeling of significance. Any questions at this point? Nope. Okay, so we continue. The key in allowing emotions, or the key in emotions and dealing with emotions, is allowing them but not getting attached to them. So in other words, there are no emotions that we should not feel. All the emotions are acceptable. They don't make us weak. They don't make us somehow half human. On the other, exactly the opposite. They make us more human, and all of us have the same emotions, just in different proportions. All emotions are welcome. All emotions are acceptable. The tricky bit here is that the stronger the emotion is, the more we have the tendency to somehow want to hide. More we have the tendency to want to turn away from it. More we have the tendency, or the fear, that it's too much and we can't take it. And there might also be some fear about maybe we lose ourselves in it, and then we do something that we regret. Like in anger, if anger really takes us over, that's when people murder each other. That's when people do really crazy things. But it's neither about blocking the emotion nor getting entangled in it. It's more about letting it pass through us. And sometimes you can even do something that you can kind of use the emotion, you can use the emotional energy in a positive way. So for example, when you're pissed off, clean the whole house. It gives you really a lot of energy. And that energy, when you allow it to move without trying to block it, without getting attached to it, is something that then you can use. Yeah, and then it passes quicker. Then I would say that if you know how to meditate, and this is what I teach in a lot of my programs, like if you know how to meditate or you are learning to meditate, then how you can do with emotions is you can use them as gateways to getting deeper into your body. Yeah. The tendency when an emotion comes is that we somehow shy away from it. So it can easily mean, especially for people who are the masters of like leaving their body, and I think a lot of people are without even realizing that you somehow space out. Yeah, it's too much, so you space out, and you're not really present, and you're kind of a little bit like this. I'm exaggerating evidently, but that's more or less how it's experienced. So the tendency easily is to kind of shy away from it or leave from it. But now the idea is what you can do is you can rather feel deeper into it. Yeah, you can feel deeper into it, but feeling it more in the body. Yeah, let's do a little practice. So choose an emotion that is easy for you to psych yourself into. You know, something that is like a common emotion for you to have. It could be anger, it could be shame, it could be sadness, it could be something, but choose like a negative emotion. And then for a while you can close your eyes and just kind of put yourself in that emotion. You know, it could be even hatred, despise, guilt. And then, in a way, on a scale from 1 to 10, bring yourself as close to 10 as possible. And then start feeling where you feel it in the body. And at the same time, when you're feeling, relax. Yeah, relax your body. Relax into it. But feel it in the body. So let's say it's your lower belly, or it's your diaphragm area, or it's your throat, or it's your chest. Keep feeling it. But don't focus only in that part. Focus more on all the body. Yeah. So you're aware of all the body at the same time while you're feeling that part which is like, whoa, it's like a knot, or it's like a constriction or tightness. And keep relaxing. And I would say that in a way, wait that something changes. Either there's a movement that you can feel. Maybe the pain changes its quality or its intensity or its location. And really relax into it and just keep feeling it. Yeah. And at some point you will notice that it's much less, this physical sensation, and that this emotion is also much less. And that you also feel that you're deeper in your body. You're more grounded. Yeah. And this is very individual how exactly it happens to each person in terms of where they feel it, how the process goes, like whether they feel like movement or what kind of sensations they feel. And also each time you do this can be different. But the main thing is relax. Yeah. Relax. That's the thing. Relax and keep yourself conscious of it. And then when you feel that it's gone, then that's it. Or that it's much less. That's also another thing. So let's all take a deep inhale. And exhale. So the emotions can be like a gateway to becoming more consciously into the body, which is like the realm of the human, the realm where we can really heal. Yeah. And another technique that I think is very common nowadays, that's kind of similar, but it doesn't require so much meditative neutrality, because sometimes if the emotion is really big, it's like yeah, at the beginning it can start feeling like, oh my god. And we're scared of it. Yeah, I mean, we're scared of emotions, which is the funny thing. But the more we allow them, the more comfortable we feel with emotions. Yeah. And also the more we allow them, the more space we then give to compassion in ourselves. So the heart in us, I spoke of the language of the mind, the language of the body, and somehow the realm of the mind, realm of the body. Well, the realm of the heart is consciousness. And this is something that I think a lot of traditions say that this is our essence. Yeah, consciousness is our essence, or the heart is our essence. That refers to also love, and it refers to compassion, relates to compassion. So the more space we give for our emotions, it also requires that we have compassion. Yeah, because if we don't have compassion towards ourselves, we can't really face these emotions. If the emotions are something on the list of shouldn'ts, the forbidden stuff, which would relate to like some part of our own humanity, humanness, is on the forbidden list, then there's lack of compassion. Yeah, there's lack of compassion towards our humanness. There's lack of compassion towards our hurt. There's lack of compassion towards our smallness, our vulnerability, our messiness. Yeah, because the emotions can be quite messy as well. But when we have this compassionate approach to our emotions, then the compassion also grows in the process. So the more we allow our emotions and the more we're able to compassionately be with them, not get attached, not somehow enlarge them, but allow them to run through us because they're energy in the end. The more the compassion grows in ourselves, and the more we encounter our true self, yeah, the one we are in our essence. So in a way, while you're doing this kind of work, allowing your emotions and meditatively going through them, allowing them to pass through you, at the same time you are going home. Home is where the heart is, yeah. And you're allowing those emotions also to go home. You're allowing the hurt to go home. And the funny thing is, which is I think is really beautiful actually, is that the more the love grows in you, the more compassion grows in you, more of these unseen things in you, these emotions, come up. Because they're like, I want to go home too. Yeah. And they're like, freedom. Me too. So in some way I would say that this work is never ending, but it's something that has its waves. So you might have more intense periods, especially in the beginning when you're starting this kind of work, and a lot of different emotions can come up. And then there are like smoother periods. Maybe you're focusing more on being a mother or father, or you're focusing more on your profession or something like that, or creating a whole big new association or something like that. And then you go more back to your own process again sometime, another part in your life, another stage in your life, and so on. But it's like work that is more like a lifestyle, where you are accepting and loving everything that arises in you. Yeah. And when you can have this acceptance and love in yourself, and that you can recognize that you are worthy just as you are, and that somehow you can start trusting yourself more, because you notice that you can deal with the emotions, you can deal with everything. And at the same time, your compassion towards others grows. Yeah, because we are, in the end, we're like reflections of each other. And you can't have properly compassion to another if you don't have properly compassion towards yourself. Yeah, it's always kind of like a limping compassion. Yeah, you might have compassion towards some sweeter aspects of another person, but not towards the darkness, because you have no compassion towards your own darkness. Darkness is a lot of things. We can speak about it a little bit tomorrow, but one of the things that we can say is darkness is the stuff which is hidden in our subconscious. It can be very malicious, and it can be just kind of very mild and very sweet, but it's still hidden. So it's in the darkness, it's in the shadow. Yeah. So, any questions about this? It's a huge topic, and I think we have covered the basics of it. But if you have any questions about any of this, please do let me know. You can either write in the chat, or you can turn your mic on. No questions. Okay. Any thoughts? You don't even have to ask anything. Any thoughts? Any aha moments or something that you found like similar to something else, or just let me know. You don't need to force yourself if there's nothing.
Yeah, I just when you said we are going to feel some feelings, and I feel very angry and like that, and I felt that in my stomach. And then you say you can relax and just allow it to be, and it's just how easy it went away.
Yeah. That's right.
You just like trying to get it there, and then you just relax and breathe to your stomach, and it release.
Yeah. And this is the beauty of non-resistance. Yeah. When you're not resisting, when you're allowing life to be as it is, then you're relaxed. Yeah. And then things can pass through you quicker. Probably if you're triggered by a real event, you know, like somebody steals your car, or somebody somebody steals your car, or let me say something that is not too terrible, but like, or somebody breaks into your house or something like that. I mean, there can be a lot of like fear as well, but at some point that usually the anger also comes. So if it's triggered by a real event, probably it will take longer to release it, but eventually it will. Yeah. And especially if we're speaking of now, like tomorrow we go into the inner child, yeah, and how it relates to this topic, and how we can work with that. So if we, let's say that we have something from the childhood, which is a very persistent emotion, let's say guilt or shame, or it could be anger, could be sadness, anything. We usually have to work with it quite consistently, because if it's our main tendency to feel this emotion, it could also be fear. But if it's a tendency in us which is very ingrained in our, like the basis of our psyche, you know, so let's say that we have felt this since we have been 2 years old, so it's kind of like very deep in the structure of our mind. It's not going to go away like this. It keeps coming back, and we need to work with it. But eventually what we're doing is that we are, because this work can be done like in the neutrality, yeah, that all emotions are welcome, all emotions are fine. There's no good or bad in emotions, whether they're like positive or negative emotions. Who cares? They're emotions in the end. They are emotional energy. So eventually what happens is that we start pulling it from its roots, yeah, that emotion. And it's not that we don't feel emotions after that. We do, but it's like we don't get triggered so much. And it's something that can pass through us quicker. We don't get attached to it. And it's not like a part of our identity anymore. Like very often emotions that we have had for 30, 40, 50 years are already like they're like our identity. I'm an angry person, yeah? I'm a person who feels guilt, you know? I'm a person who feels shame. And that identity has to be like cut. That connection to our identity has to be cut. And this is one way how it can happen. It might need some other work as well, but this is one way. Okay, wonderful. It was very nice to see most of you there, and I hope you got something out of it. Bye. Ciao.
Bye.